A lot has happened since the last video. CSIS has released two public statements. In first, they had acknowledged, quote, the existence of the video that has been circulating, as well as subsequent public concern raised in relation to the actions of a high-alarm department, end quote. And on the 8th of July, they released another, with a document detailing the internal investigation they conducted to figure out who did what and punish misconduct. Well, we now have the names of 2 out of the 3 agents responsible for this incident. One of them, and also the person who dropped Silent Ghosty off the World Trading Plaza building roof, Melva Echelon, and the other, XX Mini 5XX. The third one is apparently still unknown. Anyway, the document itself is pretty uninteresting, but one thing you can also regard about it is how weird it sometimes sounds. Instead of murdered or killed, they use terminated when referring to when Silent Ghosty was dropped off the roof of a high-rise building. And instead of torture, they say, quote, enhanced interrogation techniques, end quote. Kind of eerie if you ask me. Anyway, let's get to the actual news. Today I'm joined by Exiled Operations as this episode's news anchor.
Thank you, Anzak. Almost right after the video released, a series of protests spiked across Ottawa. Only one of them being pro-CSIS, as you can see on your screen. And let's stop the frame. See those people? They're mostly disguised CSIS agents. Why does CSIS have a need to go under the department team instead of being on the civilians team, disguise themselves as completely random community members and protest against Loudspeaker of Canada? Our theory is that they simply want you to think that the masses are against us, but in reality it's just people whose backs we set on fire because of their own mistakes, trying to fight back blindly for their eyes are full of tears. This pro-CSIS protest, unlike the anti-CSIS ones, was not suppressed but protected. In the end, Sync ROBLOX had to step in and tell CSIS agents to either get on the civilian team to protest or to go home, so they left the game. We'd like to commend anti-CSIS protesters, LOC sympathizers, and the victims of abuse. CSIS also kidnapped one of the protesters and then brought them into a secret location and then interrogated them. They didn't torture anyone this time though. We will not show the full video of the interrogation, but we will show you the evidence that it occurred in the CSIS bunker. So here, as you can see, it says CSIS HQ, and the location actually says quote-unquote maintenance facility. If you could also look at the minimap, you can see that it appears to be broken. This is obviously intentional, as we know from Operation Carpenter document. And then the guy is blindfolded. We didn't actually know where said location was until Operation Carpenter document was released, which brings us to our next segment.
Well. It didn't take too long for something to happen with my favorite department again. This week, SSMP and the IGM decided to mess with CSIS jointly. We're not going to talk about the unauthorized use of my work today, we're going to keep it professional. We have to also keep in mind that SSMP usually causes a lot of satire in their intelligence reports, as they obviously did with this one, so we will be very concise and will sometimes reword or skip over certain things in the document to keep a more serious tone. You can read the full version of the document if you join the LOC Discord server. It's in our newsfeed channel. They highly focused on the big Sabrina Carpenter portrait in the main room of the whole facility, which I personally find pretty funny. They actually call it shrine-like and say that it's mounted in the main room with a clear symbolic prominence. He also asked a question, is this seriously a good use of development resources? I disagree on the shrine part, but I will take the liberty of giving the answer to the presented question, and obviously to no, it's not. And I think we all know how much Enigmic is obsessed with Sabrina, but don't you think a giant portrait in the black side is a bit over the top? Driver doesn't put pictures of food in PPS documents, so why do you think this is acceptable? Anyway, the facility includes an armory, an interrogation room, what looks like to be a small hospital, a parking garage, and of course the tunnels. The tunnels, as stated in the document, offer discrete entry and exit from the building. One of them leads to an elevator shaft that goes all the way to the D&D roof to allow helicopter access. I do personally suspect there may be some type of hidden teleporter in their HQ, like Kansofcom used to have a teleporter to the post office. Just a theory though. The existence of this black site alone proves that Caesars can just do whatever. Pretty much all Caesars agents with exceptions have a superiority complex and think they can run around doing whatever they want, and they're right. They can, and they do, despite openly denying it. All because their director is the only active developer in this group, so they basically have full immunity. No other department would even dream of things like this. The OFS are still waiting for the training campus since like 2022, and the development team decides to make things like this instead. Priorities straight, I guess. We urge Canadian citizens to remain vigilant, demand transparency, challenge the narrative, hold your institutions accountable, not only for what they do in public, but what they hide underground. Back to you, Exiled.
We start our Armed Forces segment with a video of a heinous incident. The video starts and we see 6 Queen's-Own rifle soldiers standing around 2 detained individuals after said individuals acted as hostiles during a training exercise. One hostile leaves the game and Sergeant GMS 54 detains the other one and puts him on the ground. Sergeant GMS then throws a gas grenade next to him. The gas spreads and the victim gets damaged. The victim is then shot and killed by 3 soldiers, which are Sergeant GMIS, Sergeant Wastug, and Private Ronaldinho. These 3 soldiers were quote-unquote punished, if you can even call it that. As you can see on your screen, they all got physical training of, from what our internal sources tell us, 50 jumping jacks. Does that seem reasonable and proportional to you? Me neither. Sergeant GMS, who initiated the whole situation, has also apparently been quote-unquote appointment demoted, meaning he should have been made Deputy Director of Training. And he was, however, a day later put back into his original director position. Now I know that this series of violations occurred after a training, but last time I checked, it doesn't matter. And I'm not saying they should have been punished as if this offense was committed in a public server rather than a private one, but then what is the point of having rules if you're not going to enforce them at all times? We'll leave that question to you, the viewer. Next up, the funeral of Master Warrant Officer SBPRP. The Royal Canadian Air Force decided to host a funeral proceeding of a Master Warrant Officer they said are quote-unquote missing in action. Hosted by Major Venom Isaac L., they formed up at the National War Memorial in Ottawa, and after a short ceremony and a 3-gun salute, they left. Let us be clear that no one died in real life. Despite this, the funeral was attended by a number of important people, being Air Commodore Blanc _2004 was probably the person who authorized the whole event, Colonel SV _VK, and Major General Just Silenced. With Brock Zero resigning, it looks like SIU Lieutenant Commander Tiener will take the lead and become the next commander, for he is the only remaining officer within SIU. The other option being SIU Unit Warrant Officer Huck _Guai, both not particularly great options. From what we know, Commander Tiener isn't particularly active in the Canadian Armed Forces and CRC as a whole. He prefers to direct more of his attention to CCs instead, so it's likely he will be able to maintain a unit that's already failing. As for Hawk _Guai, from what we know, he owns and has used a number of weird and offensive items of clothing on ROBLOX, and he is also known for his rather weird behavior. He is also rumored to have used a sulfurware, which is a City of Ottawa exploit that used to be widely known within the community back in 2022.
Hey everyone, post-production Onzak here. So on 8th of July, Game Editor was appointed commander of SIU, but I didn't want to bother Exile to record this 10-second memo, so you're hearing this from me.
We also saw the resignation of the official tailor to His Excellency Commander Royal Canadian Logistics Services Corporal Penguin Craft 08, better known by his past name iBoomer 08. Now, as for the issue with Penguin Craft 8 resigning, the RCLS is left without a commander and there is no clear replacement. The closest best option would be AW_DK, but we can't say for sure if he will accept the responsibility. After all, he is the QR's regimental warrant officer. Being the commander of RCLS will add a whole lot of other issues to the already giant pile of them that he has to deal with. We also can't say what's generally going to happen to RCLS as a branch. With Penguin Craft being the commander and the highest tailor for so long, a change of command is almost certain to cause issues in RCLS and in the Canadian Armed Forces as a whole. And unfortunately, that's all for the armed forces. Let's move on. This summer, we've seen a spike of organized crime. Unfortunately, as per usual, most new organizations are absolutely horrible. The only decent one is quote-unquote Islamic Jihad Movement or IJM. They actually have somewhat good numbers and they don't die to random RCMP corporals. They've also posted a multitude of propaganda videos in which they target CSIS and CAF personnel, as you can see on your screen. Despite this, for some reason they're still not declared. The other notable one is North Continental Authority or NCA. However, as evidence shows, they appear not to present much of a threat.